Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Great. We'll just give folks just a moment to hop in the Zoom screen here, and we will kick off shortly. Great. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome to another installment in the MBDA Super Webinar Series. Today is Monday, March 30th, 2026, and today's webinar topic is mental health and resilience for bicycle retailers. I'm Megan Schmidt, NBDA Programs Developer, and we appreciate you joining today for this important conversation or watching if you're on our recording. So, as we all know, running an independent bike shop is one of the most rewarding things you can do, but it is also genuinely demanding. Economic pressures, staffing challenges, and just the daily weight of, especially a seasonal small business, and being an owner, staff, manager, whatever hats you wear, just can make it hard to focus on your own well-being. So today's session will cover recognizing the difference between everyday stress, burnout, to anxiety and depression, and practical strategies to respond to these challenges. So we're honored to welcome two guests from Samaritan Consulting Group who will lead us through a practical, judgment-free conversation created specifically for specialty bicycle retailers. Our presenters today are Simon Dietz, licensed clinical social worker and clinical director at Samaritan Consulting Group, and Austen Kewin, clinical mental health counseling intern. Simon and Austen, welcome. Thank you both for being here. We did just chat bikes before this too. So again, thanks for joining us this Monday.
Okay. Yeah, it's great to be here. This is, again, like I shared, this is a personal topic for me. I enjoy bikes. Growing up, I have a few people that really mentored me in the bike riding world who I looked up to, but also my local bike shop. I remember, as a kid biking there and looking at the things on the wall, getting new equipment installed on my bike when I didn't know how to do it myself. And so that bike shop is still alive and doing well today, but that holds a personal spot. Also, this topic of just, again, mental health and resilience. And I'm just passionate about helping people understand, again, sometimes the things that we're going through, being able to give words to that and help us understand how do we not only like survive, but thrive and have people around us and create cultures that are doing that.
I love that. Awesome. Thanks, and Austen, thank you so much for being here as well.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here. And I love to ride my bike to work when I can. I in a season of young kids that aren't ready for bikes yet, but my firstborn was just on his balance bike, so hopefully I can get him up and ready and into a small shop. He's very technical, loves learning all the little tinkering things. So a personalized small shop is the place that he would love to be, I'm sure. So yeah, excited to be here and excited to yeah, to just help and support in any way we can.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. And again, I appreciate just kind of sharing. I think bikes are such a connecting thing in this world, and we're all privileged to be in this space. So, yeah, I just love how that all ties together, and we can all kind of support each other there too. So, for everyone attending live, just a few quick Zoom housekeeping notes. If you can update your Zoom display name to include your name, shop name, or organization and state, so we can acknowledge you properly. We will have a Q&A at the end of the session too, so about 45 minutes. In about 45 minutes, you're welcome to use the chat or the Q&A function, which also has an anonymous feature too. If you just like to submit a question anonymously, please do. We'll moderate these questions for the speakers at the end at this time too. And just the last note, this webinar is being recorded, and if you can't make the whole thing, or if you just want to reference it in the future, it will be on our super webinars page. And lastly, we have shared this out in Zoom, but just wanted to share here as well a resource prepared by the Samaritan Consulting Group too. You'll have that emailed out to you as well along with the webinar, but feel free to peruse this as the presentation goes here too. So I will pop that in the chat. And with that, Austen, I will turn it over to you to present.
Sure. Yeah, well, again, let me just extend my welcome to all of you who are here. And I just want to acknowledge the choice you made to come. It's This topic is often one I found that people love to avoid until maybe they have no choice to. And so if that's you, I just want to validate your courage and the humility it takes to be here. And maybe that's not you, and you are just curious about this, or you recognize that there's valid stressors in the world, and you're being proactive. And I just want to praise that and affirm that. And hopefully, wherever you are in that and in your business journey, that this can be a place that offers hope and insight and something that you feel you really is supportive to you going forward. That's our hope. Um, I have a couple stories or little vignettes that maybe you can relate to, maybe yourself, or maybe it's someone that you know comes to mind. They're all taken from real small bike shop owners. There's a testimony of someone, a man who is, despite his constant work, he struggles with low profitability, and it's causing him to question his career choice and to feel unappreciated, especially during intense or busy seasons. Perhaps you can relate to that. Or maybe you find that you're someone who's starting to avoid customer interaction, or you're becoming emotionally detached from the bicycle repair process that you once loved. But one of the reasons that you started what you're doing, maybe it's often resulting from feeling like you're just managing the shop and trying to survive rather than actually building or thriving in it. Or perhaps you're an owner who previously enjoyed working on these bikes and now you feel unable to even start working in the morning. Maybe you're feeling extra irritable in all spheres of life, or perhaps you feel like you have no personal life outside of the shop. That's this thing that you once loved has now consumed you. I'm sure maybe all of us maybe could relate to parts of this ourselves, or maybe someone surely that we know. And I share that hopefully to normalize that this is not a crazy, unique something's wrong with you phenomenon if you do feel like this described you. But in our day to day, it's a world of uncertainty, a lot of stress, a lot of chaos. In fact, a Canadian mental health study found that 62% of business owners felt depressed at least once a week. And so this depressive feeling, not just, oh, I feel kind of bummed, but I'm really struggling with this sense of depression and disengagement, and 54% of those people admitted that that impacted their work directly. The numbers of this study there, it's expected that this is even higher in the United States. And so let me just start by normalizing the world that we live in. This may be a bit of a jarring slide, right? There's a number of things that this may elicit in you. We live in a time of war, of politics, of social media that's fueling these echo chambers. Maybe there's uncertainty about finances, or maybe the people that you're tasked to care with, anger, questions, and this overarching sense of uncertainty. If you're feeling this, let me just again say you are not crazy. You're not alone. And I think even that is worth just sitting with for a second. You're not crazy. You're not alone. This makes sense. And so I just want to start with invite you into a little exercise that we can do right now together wherever we're at. If you're in your seat, just or wherever maybe you're standing, just get in a comfortable position and just I invite you, close your eyes if you're able, if that feels safe, and just take a deep breath in and hold it and exhale and do that one more time. In for 4, hold for 4, and exhale. And just take note where you are right now. What do you notice? Maybe there was something that specifically stood out to you on that slide. But as you're breathing, notice where you are, what's around you. Perhaps I look outside and I see the sunshine and spring is coming and it has been long awaited. I'm here in this moment. And so I do that is even a small example. Hopefully, maybe you notice just a bit more calm as I was talking about all of these stories and stresses. It's something that we can feel embodied. And the simple breathing and noticing here we are. Right now, we're in this moment. And I just invite you to be present to what this space has for you. That was an example of a mindfulness exercise, and we'll get into some of this in more detail in our the remainder of our time together. As we go forward, I want to just present and echo a few of the overarching goals of our time together. We want to give you a greater self-awareness and language to understand what might be going on in your experience. An American psychologist and author, Daniel Goleman, is quoted saying, if you don't have self-awareness, if you are not able to manage your distressing emotions, if you can't have empathy and have effective relationships, then no matter how smart you are, you're not going to get very far. So it's been found that a higher emotional awareness or emotional EQ leads to better performance in the workplace, better leadership, better adaptability. And so we want to provide language and insight for what's going on into your world and what you may be experiencing. That's a huge first step, simply to just provide language around, oh, okay, this is what this is. That's going to increase awareness. It's going to make you a more emotionally intelligent and aware person, which is going to benefit all spheres of your life, including business. Second, we want to move from there into providing some practical tools for how do you respond to the workplace stress or perhaps burnout that you might be experiencing. And so maybe many of us have heard different words like this: active listening, remaining calm, having self-reflection, even mindfulness. That's a word that I had used. But I want to invite us a level deeper, hopefully today, and to say, how do we cultivate these things in our life? Many of us would say, that sounds nice. I want to do that. But what are some practical tools of, okay, so what's my step in my sphere, in my phase of life? How can I do that? Um, so that would be a goal. And maybe to say, what's preventing these things? What might be keeping you from doing some simple steps that promote greater awareness, greater resilience in the workplace? And my challenge to you as we go through today, if you can identify one or two things that stand out to you, really hone in, keep a lookout. What stands out to you? And it might be different for each person here. But just have that in mind. That's my challenge. If you can take one or two things, then I think this time will be worth it and worth your time and investment. So moving forward, let's start with just a few term definitions. When we talk about stress, most of us can identify when we're feeling stress, but for the state of our time, or for the purpose of our time together, let's define stress as a state of worry caused by a difficult situation. And I just want to point out that stress is a natural human response. It's something that nudges us to address the challenging situations in our life. This is actually a biochemical response. The body releases cortisol from the adrenal glands, and this is actually the body preparing you for a response, right? To survive, to combat something. Your blood sugar will increase, and non-essential aspects of body functioning will actually be suppressed. And so to be human is to experience a level of stress. It's not a matter of avoiding stress, but it's how we take in our environment and what we perceive as stressful, and then how we respond to that stress that's going to impact our overall well-being. So stress, neutral term, but we're going to get in. I want to split this into positive and negative aspects of stress. So we have positive stress called eustress, and that is a beneficial, that would be a short-term type of stress that motivates, it actually might energize you to complete a task. Or maybe that would be sort of like rising to the challenge. A good example might be in sports. Right? If you're at the starting block of a race, you're going to feel a little bit of stress. That's a good thing. You want some of that. Or perhaps a stress that about an upcoming exam. You want a little bit of stress that's going to motivate you to then rise to the challenge and do well on that. However, many of us may have first thought, when I say stress, think of distress, which would be negative stress. And that's going to be that harmful kind of stress that is caused by overwhelming pressures or unexpected occurrences that exceed your ability to cope or thrive. So when you have this challenge and you think, wow, this is too much, that's when you're getting into that negative stress. It's taxing on you. It's not actually driving you to productivity. And when that happens, and that's unrelenting, and persistent, it leads to chronic stress. And that's the kind of thing that, if unchecked, can lead to burnout, often can create symptoms of anxiety and even physical disease or harm. What is the impact of stress on business leadership? Well, all of these things are going to be present in your life. There's a place for good stress, for motivation, for productivity, but also distress. As I mentioned from that biochemical response, your cognitive functioning is going to be impaired. It's going to be reduced because your body's response is, okay, I'm here, I got to fight this challenge. And so it's preparing you to do that. So if you live in that state, and even chronically, it can lead to emotional exhaustion. It can lead to decreased decision making, decisions that ultimately maybe lead to more stress. Chronic stress can lead to analysis paralysis, is a term that many have coined. You don't even know what to do. You're just frozen. Or perhaps risk aversion. You have so much stress that you can't even possibly think about a healthy risk that you need to make your business grow. It can also lead to reduced empathy. And so that impacts your relationships, both with customers or with others that you may be working with before. And all of this can lead to a negative work culture, leading to higher turnover or decreased productivity, and then the cycle repeats. So that's going to be stress. Let me provide some language for anxiety. This is an emotion characterized by apprehension or fear, often physical symptoms in the body related to muscle tension. So this would be a feeling of impending danger or catastrophe or misfortune, where the body again is mobilizing to meet a perceived threat. So you might note if you're feeling anxious, heart rate increases, your breathing might become more shallow, the muscles are ready to fight. An example, I know of a small business owner, and he wakes up in the middle of the night. Will my family be okay? And his mind's just racing. He didn't ask for that. His body's just kicked into this anxious mode, and he's unable to fall back asleep because he's thinking about that. That's going to be anxiety. Maybe you can relate. All of us, again, have different moments of anxiety. I want to treat these as neutral terms and more descriptive of this is what happens in our body due to different stimuli that we might be facing. Next, let's talk about depression. So depression we'll define as a persistent sadness characterized by a loss of interest in activities, low energy, perhaps for an extended period of time, and something that significantly interferes with daily life. It's not just I had a down day, but it's something that's persistent, something that lingers, and it's often a mix of both genetic and biological and environmental factors all coming together. And negatively affects how you think and act and perceive the whole world. Think of glasses, putting on a kind of a pair of glasses that just dampens everything. And I want to emphasize here that it's it's not just a choice. When we're talking about depression, that can be really helpful that this is a phenomenon that's going on that's often embodied, and it's more than just, oh, change your attitude. Um, but there's this physiological aspect of this. There's something chemically, neurochemically happening, and often that can lead to fatigue, feeling worthless and guilty, trouble thinking and concentrating, and in serious cases, even suicidal ideation. An example of this might be the woman who used to love spending time with her kids upon returning home from work. And now when she gets home, she retreats to her bedroom. She doesn't have energy to check in. It's hard to even wake up, and she doesn't even want to show up for dinner with her family. This thing that's not just about trying harder, but this blanket that's sitting on her that she just feels heavy. That's depression. And then burnout we'll define as a state of emotional and mental, often physical exhaustion that's brought on by prolonged or repeated stress. So this can often be from work. It could be from other issues like relationship issues or caretaking issues. Different things in life and different seasons, we recognize that we'll experience anxiety, stress, maybe even some depressive symptoms. When these continue on, that can lead us to burnout. It's this continued state that based on prolonged and repeated stress. Now, one distinction I want to make between this and depression is that a lot of times these may look similar. The symptoms, being exhausted, not having enthusiasm, negativity, irritability, very similar. Often with burnout, though, getting away, specific rest, specific techniques like that's going to help. It's just, it might be more of a sign of, hey, you're going too hard. Often, if you live in that state of burnout, it can do things to your body that might lead to ongoing depressive symptoms, but there is a distinction between these two. I'm hopeful that this diagram might be descriptive, and maybe it would be good for each person to just consider, hey, where might you fall on this? 5 stages of burnout. So you've got this honeymoon stage, and I'll put it in the context of maybe a hypothetical small business owner. You're starting a job, you have great enthusiasm, you have a love for biking, you want to share that with the world. You know, we've heard that great thing. If you love what you do every day, you don't have to work a day in your life. Right? You have this optimism, this commitment, you're gonna do it. And you've got a space, you've got a vision, and so you throw yourself into that. You get to stage 2, and you realize, well, you might love the things that you're doing, but there's an aspect of work in everything, and there's certain aspects that come up. There's certain maybe stagnation. You're kind of like, wow, the grind of every day starts to hit you, or specific stressors come in. Maybe productivity goes down. You're starting to feel anxious, or you're overworked. That's easy to lead into chronic stress. That continues on. And soon you're feeling frustrated. Maybe you're even neglecting your personal needs. You spend another 70, 80-hour week doing things that needed to get done because they had to be, and it was only you that could do it. You start to resent the things that you have to do, or maybe you're even projecting that in other areas of life. In that place of chronic stress, that's what's going to lead to this stage 4, this burnout, characterized by apathy, exhaustion, despair, and often physical symptoms. It's something that we feel physically often too. And then if we stay in this, if we don't combat that, if we don't know what to do when we're experiencing burnout, that can lead to habitual burnout, where our bodies literally are trained and that's what they know. We live in that state so long that that's what our bodies are just used to. That's the new normal. And when we get into that place, we often need specific support, or we may struggle to even function. And we may need extra support. And I want to again emphasize that this isn't a how dare you condemnation kind of thing, but there's a lot of valid reasons that can lead people through these stages. And so our hope is to say, wherever you are in it, say, okay, well, how do we reach out and how do we receive what we need in that stage to help get out of that cycle? The goal is not to stay in habitual burnout or burnout even, but how do we move through stress? How do we face anxieties? How do we deal with that in a healthy way that helps prevent getting stuck in a place of burnout, or even worse, just getting stuck where that's all you ever know. That's all your body knows what to do, and you're just staying in that state. So again, I hope this language can be normalizing. I really hope maybe you've heard something and you say, oh, okay, I'm not crazy. Maybe what I'm talking about might be bringing to mind something that you're like, oh, I thought I just needed to get my act together. You're not crazy. You make sense. You make sense. There are reasons for why you're experiencing the things that you feel, and they're very natural consequences to normal things. What they're telling us, if we notice these things, is what I really want to focus in on. And that's something we can do something about. To say, instead of feeling bad about what we're feeling or where we might be in these stages, to say, okay, where am I? And what is this telling me? And that's going to be a guide, actually, to guide our response. And to each of our responses that can hopefully help us and get to a place of greater wellness, greater thriving. So I want to move on to some tools and just a little bit of what we can do about this. What do we do about this reality? And this is going to be a little bit of a mix, still providing some language for you. And so this diagram I find very helpful, and I just want to talk through it a little bit with you guys. First, we live in a world we were designed ideally to come as people with a prefrontal cortex. We have logic and reasoning. When that's all on, the ideal state where we're feeling present, here I can handle things, something a little bit unexpected might happen, but okay, I'm a resilient person. I'm responding. That's in this thing called a window of tolerance. This is a state of emotional regulation. It's where we have the ability to handle stress, to process our emotions, to reason, to regulate ourselves. And then you've got at the top and bottom edge of this, you have dysregulation. That would be the upper and lower bound of this window of tolerance. And that is defined by hyper or hypo arousal. So that's a ramping up hyper arousal or a hypo, which is a shutting down of the amygdala. So that's lower part of our brainstem. You've got this reptilian part of your brain that's not about rational thinking. It's about survival instincts. And that's a common things maybe we've all heard of the flight, fight, or freeze response. That's associated with that. And so when we are in hyper arousal, our amygdala, that part of our brain, think of like an animal's like jackal standing up, the hair standing up. It's ready. It's hyper arousal. It's ready to fight. It's might have yeah. It's getting prepared to defend itself from that survival instinct of our brain. In humans, this may express itself like anxiety, irritability, perhaps anger, rage, even physically with tension. Maybe your heart's racing. A word for this would be hypervigilant. You're ready to go. Hypoarousal, the bottom edge of that window, would be more shutting down. Think of a possum, classic example of this. It's going to shut you down. Maybe that in humans, that might be numbness, depression, uh, a dissociation, which would be kind of that out of body experience. If you've ever experienced that, where you're like, I don't even really feel like I remember what was going on. But you're foggy, maybe you're extra exhausted, you're feeling withdrawn, or you're really struggling to focus. And again, I want to emphasize this is not a bad or a wrong thing. This is your body responding and doing what it was designed to do. When we needed to defend ourselves, we still do at different times, right? It's good to have a physical response that can respond to stressors and to stimuli to know when I need to fight or when I need to disengage. Right? This happens with an injury. The body goes into shock. That's really quite a gift to you, so that you're not so aware of the pain you're experiencing. You're dysregulating, you're going into hypoarousal, you're dissociating from that. That's a protective measure. Or perhaps you're if you need to fight, you need to defend yourself. You want a little bit of that adrenaline. You want that hypervigilance. That's there to serve you. And so every day we're bouncing around in this window of tolerance and sometimes coming out of it, sometimes coming into it. And so why does this matter? The reason I make you aware of this is that when we are outside of that window, our prefrontal cortex, which is the place where we have rational thought, where we make decisions, where we regulate our emotions, effectively goes offline. Again, that reptilian brain is saying it's time to survive. I don't have time to think about logical things right now. And so if we're in constant stress and we're unaware of where we are in this window, we might be living in a world where we all look fine outwardly, but inwardly, we're all subconsciously often at times, we're not even aware of this, navigating this window and in and out. Maybe you snap at someone. Say, where did that come from? Or you find that you're just totally zoned out. Maybe even some of you now you start struggling to focus. You're sitting when we took a few breaths, you might have been like, "Ooh, okay, I got to focus in," right? That's subconsciously, you're kind of moving in and out of these states of regulation. We're doing that. But when you're in constant stress, or put that into the context of running a business. Running a business requires management, requires decision making, requires strategy. And all of these things are connected to your physiological self. If the decision making, reasoning part of your brain is shut off, you're not likely to make wise or strategic or profitable decisions. In survival mode, creativity is often stifled. That makes sense, right? Or if you're experiencing chronic stress, or you're someone who has a limited ability to cope with stress, it's understandable that you would be spending a lot of time outside of this window of tolerance, and then you're making poor decisions. You might not even be aware. Maybe you're so used to your normal just being this constant state of I've got to go, or you're just so used to being exhausted and fatigued. That's going to lead to poor decision making, which again fuels that deregulatory cycle. Some of us live in this so regularly that the cortisol released and the stress response can just remain high in the body. And it's something that becomes our new normal. It's not just a matter of saying, I'm going to decide right now and it's going to change. We have been practicing this our whole lives and training ourselves with a certain pattern. And so just even bringing awareness of this can be a helpful first step to say, where have you been? Even today so far. Have you been in that window of tolerance? Have you felt like, okay, I'm here? Have you been in survival mode because there's so much to do and that you're just like, I'm just trying to get through it. I haven't even been thinking. Or perhaps you're just feeling kind of numb. Just take stock of that. And our goal, the ideal goal would be to live more in this window of tolerance and also to expand it. And I want to just validate that each person's window of tolerance is different. You need to watch out for comparison or specific expectations. There's genetic influencers of this, also life experiences, childhood experiences. I'll use classic therapist kind of language. Why we look back at childhood experiences is they can often inform the way that our brains have been formed and taught. We grow. This window of tolerance is something that grows, especially in the early formative years. Think of a child learning and experiencing stresses. When a child doesn't get food right away, what does it do? It cries. Now, if I did that now, you'd think I was kind of weird, right? You'd be like, just go get food. I've learned how to meet that need, or I've learned when I'm feeling hungry, I don't have to go into hyper arousal or hypoarousal. I don't have to dysregulate because I know how to process that emotion and then eventually get what I need. And so that's what we learn that growing up. And if we have prolonged stress or trauma, or we're in situations where we didn't receive what we needed, we didn't receive the support we needed, that's going to impact that window of tolerance and how we live in that for the rest of our life. So perhaps you've heard the word trigger before. That's referring to a cue or something that might cue that response that you've learned earlier in life that sends your brain into survival mode. So think of if someone grew up in a violent context or a place where there was a lot of conflict and you never knew where you stood. You kind of always had to be on guard. Then if there's conflict in the workplace, your brain often subconsciously is going to send itself into, okay, I got to survive. I've got to be on guard. Right? Whereas someone that has learned, oh, conflict's okay, and I've learned to process through that because someone modeled that, they're going to have a higher window of tolerance when that conflict comes. And so we want to be aware of where are we in that window. And again, this isn't shaming. This is, hey, what have we done? I love the context that might not be your fault, but it is your problem now because the problem emerge when the learned responses to stress that once helped us in life, once helped us to cope, when they become unhelpful, that's when problems emerge. None of these responses is inherently wrong. A child is supposed to cry when they're hungry, but that has helped us, that helped that child. If that's what they learned and stayed in, then that's going to become unhelpful later in life. And the same is true when we get into business environments. If we never learned how to cope with stress, our window of tolerance is going to be smaller. And we want to figure out how do we help grow that? How do we expand that window of tolerance? The good news is our brains are malleable. There's a lovely word called neuroplasticity. It basically means your brain can grow, your brain can change. Just like a healthy business can grow, can change, it can adapt. It doesn't mean that it's always easy, but often if we have intentionality, if we have clarity, that can help us to know how to do that, to learn newer and healthier ways of being and functioning. And so that's the invitation to each person. I would say no matter where you are on your personal journey, on your business journey, see this as an invitation into growth and maturity. And I like, to use a bike analogy, if you're training and you get on a bike and you haven't done much biking, yeah, flat trail is probably going to be okay, right? But you start to get to hills. Okay, that's some stress that you're adding. You want a little bit of that stress, and you can actually grow and adapt through that, and you can grow and increase your capacity to handle that well. Eventually, maybe you're going to do some big mountain passes. You've got a big trip planned and you're going to be riding a lot. Now, if you jumped right to that, probably not a good idea, right? But you slowly grow and you expand your capacity in the same way. That's what we want to do with our window of tolerance. This is a journey, lifelong journey, and hopefully one that doesn't feel crushing, but actually can feel hopeful and invitational. This is actually an invitation to growth, to explore new things, because when you grow and you have greater capacity, it opens you up to greater possibilities and experiences. You're able to handle more risk and more uncertainty. And this is in all aspects of life, in business, but also in relationships. And think again on that bike trip, man, amazing views in the mountains. It's opening you up to the possibility of experiencing new and exciting things. That's the invitation here. Growth and healing starts with self-regulation and grounding. And all of those are describing this place of being back in that window of tolerance. So how do we self-regulate? How do we get into that window of tolerance? As another sell point, let me just say the benefits of self-regulation. That's the words I'm going to use for that. How do we self-regulate? How do we stay in that window? We want to be in that window because studies have shown that being in that window of tolerance, in that regulated place, increases productivity and performance. It reduces burnout and turnover in businesses. It enhances company culture and loyalty, and it leads to improved leadership effectiveness. For business owners, I think most people would say, I would love that. If you have something that can do all of those things, you'd be like, I'm in. Leaders and business leaders and owners who prioritize self-care are going to build better resilience. They're going to think more strategically. You're going to set a positive, productive example for others that you may be working with. And usually this leads to improved financial results and business metrics. So some strategies for self-regulation. How do we do this? How do we help stay in a place of regulation? How do we grow in this? I'm going to start with some individual strategies that each of you can practice. How do you get back into and expand that window of tolerance? We'll break up the individual strategies into a few different categories. First, we'll start with physical. What are some physical strategies involving your body? Because we are multifaceted people, right? And our bodies impact our mental health, our functioning, our decision making. We already modeled one of this earlier this session with deep breathing. Perhaps just take one more deep breath with me again. Let's go in for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold. And exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Studies have shown that simple breathing exercises have neurological effects that help reduce stress levels and help get you back into that window of tolerance. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I love this example. It's very, very practical. I just want to lead you all through it right now. So I want you to look around and to yourself, or perhaps if you have a pen and paper, write this down. What are 5 things that you can see? 5 things in your world. I see my phone. I can write that down. I see a picture on my desk. 5 things. Next, you would name 4 things that you can feel, that you can touch. Are you sitting in a chair? What material is it? What's something else you can touch? What does it feel like? What's its texture? Just notice that. 4 things. Then you're going to do 3 things that you can hear. What do you notice right now? The computer fan is going right now. Maybe you hear quiet. That counts. 3 things you can hear. Then you do 2 things that you can smell. You may need to be a little creative depending on where you're at. If you're in a bike shop, I mean, there's distinct smells, right? If you're on the floor, right? That you can all probably call to mind that tire smell. And then 1 thing you can taste. What's the taste of your mouth right now? So what this is doing is it's bringing you back to this present moment, which is helping your brain kind of come back out of that survival mode to say, oh, here I am right now. Here, my whole brain is on. We're able to think, we're able to analyze things, we're able to um, be connected to both parts of our brain, not just the survival part. Movement and exercise, hugely helpful as a technique. Um, and then this ties into that often. I mean, biking, you're pedaling right, left, right, or running or walking. You're doing this naturally when you're moving a lot of times. This term is bilateral stimulation. And what this is it's stimulating the left and right hemispheres of your brain. So you might have heard, are you right-brained? Are you left-brained? In a very generic sense, you've got the right brain is more of the emotional, I'm sensing and picking up the emotions of things. And the left brain is making sense of that, the more logical part of the brain. And ideally, these can be working as a team, working in tandem. So bilateral stimulation, and you can do this now even if you're sitting or if you're standing, you can cross your arms and put your hand and just lightly tap on your upper arm. And what you're doing is you're stimulating left and right. And what you can do in that is you can often think of a really positive memory or a place that you love to go to relax. And just simply bringing that resource to mind and stimulating the left and the right. Or you can tap right above your knees is another posture if that's more comfortable. That's stimulating right. And there's studies that have shown that that actually helps process through stress, helps regulate the mind. If you're a reader, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, a fascinating book about the way that trauma and stress is in the mind, body, person, how it's all related and how often our bodies store trauma and stress in ways that being aware of our bodies and our physical selves can actually be a huge gateway into growth and to healing. So definitely recommend if that's something you'd be interested in, definitely check that book out. All right, next, some mental cognitive strategies. Again, some of these you might find there's a lot of overlap in this, and that's okay. That's a good thing. Mindfulness, simply being present to what's around you. Maybe that's meditation of some sort, or simply just noticing what is, taking a few moments to breathe is both a physical strategy and also can be used and integrated into mindfulness. Visualization is an offshoot of that. I just had you bring to mind a scene, a place where you would love to go. And if you to visualize that or visualize something calm, that can be helpful. Labeling emotions. There's a great term called externalization. Maybe you're feeling stressed with all your to-do lists. There's one thing to say, I'm, to say, wow, everything's going crazy. Oh my gosh, my world's in an uproar. Versus to say, okay, I am feeling stressed. I'm labeling that emotion as something I'm experiencing. You're starting to bring a little bit of space between you and others. How are you and what you're feeling? That can be really helpful to help get out of that survival instinct and to get back into that window of tolerance. Lastly, reframing your thoughts and your emotions. Saying, okay, I'm seeing this. What does this challenge mean? Am I going to think about it as oh my gosh, everything is always dot dot dot? Or how can we think about that in a more positive light? Perhaps one thing you could be aware of is maybe an all or nothing mindset when we're trying to grow. To reframe life to say, you know what? How am I judging myself right now? Am I someone who's in process and growing? Or how am I thinking about my failures, about my stressors? Reframing the way we think about what we're perceiving can be very helpful to us. Holding both and. There's a lot of stress. And also, I love bikes. I love what I do. How can we grow in holding both of those, being aware of those things? That's going to help us. Lastly, on the individual level, just behavioral and environmental strategies. Taking a pause, again, you can fill that pause with any number of these other strategies, but maybe it's setting a timer throughout your day, maybe it's a minute, 1 minute of your time where you just pause in the workday and you breathe or you think about what's something I'm really excited about. Take a pause. Recreation, huge, right? Many of us, the ironic thing is many of you are in the business of recreation, and yet that has become not recreation now, right? Where do you maybe need to rediscover your passion and motivation or consider new hobbies? That can be one of the challenges if you're doing something. Most of you are probably doing what you're doing because biking was a recreational activity. And if that's not anymore, is there something that is? Can you consider where or what you could do to have recreation? Sleep. Sleep is huge, which if you're busy, I get could be difficult. There's studies recommend 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Less than seven consistently is linked to many negative physical, mental, and emotional effects. And that's what that sleep does is it actually shrinks that window of tolerance. It's going to shrink that automatically, and it's going to make the rest of the day harder. More stress is going to be easier to get you into either that hyper or hypo arousal. Screen and media habits. I always love to be a proponent of this. We live in a unprecedented time with tons of technological advance, and what screen stimulation does specifically, especially on social media, it is designed to keep stimulating your mind, to give you these little dopamine hits to say, oh, I want to keep going. I want to keep scrolling. I want to keep scrolling. What that does is it doesn't help you process emotion. It's this avoidance, it's this escape, and it's actually going to leave you further exhausted and reduce your capacity to cope and process. Screens and screen use before bed has been linked to worse sleep quality and again, shrinking that window of tolerance. A great resource, if you're interested in learning more about that, is Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation. He looks at this primarily from a teen research perspective, but it's been directly linked through studies of how social media and screens have been directly linked to a greater and increased anxiety. This is something that's impacting our younger generations, especially as they're being formed, but it's impacting all of us as well. So definitely another book recommendation if you are a reader. And then lastly, just this idea of community engagement. That's going to be huge, having a support network around us. It's an individual strategy that becomes a corporate strategy to have healthy places to process stress, a team of people that can be pouring into you. Maybe that's a spiritual community. Maybe that's other business owners. Maybe that's your family, your friends. Don't take that for granted. That's huge. And that can be really easy to neglect, especially when life gets busy. All right, a couple corporate strategies as we look to land the plane. Let me just emphasize the most important thing you can do as a corporate strategy is starting with yourself and modeling a healthy stress management and self-regulation. That's going to do wonders because you're providing that resource to other people as well. As you grow, that's going to benefit the entire business. Other specific things to think about. How can you utilize colleagues? Nature, I get that there may be business owners here that you say, I don't have any. Okay, what would it look like to put some support networks in? Is there a way to network with other people that may be experiencing what you're experiencing? Places that you can structure into your day, a place where you can kind of bounce things off of each other. You can simply maybe just have a moment to say, hey, am I crazy or is this hard? Relational connection can be a huge support, no matter how many people that you're working with. Studies have shown that productivity is up to 50% higher where there are teams of relational trust as well. So fostering trust in this and in the way that you're working. How can you do that? How can you promote healthy business culture? Good questions to ask yourself. Promoting structures like short breaks or opportunities to reset and regulate that don't have to cripple productivity. Again, take a minute. Hey, a part of our culture here, however many people are working, at 2 p.m., we always pause for 5 minutes. We think about something we're excited about. Something like that can do wonders for the corporate, just your business kind of feel and what's going on throughout the day. I also want to encourage you to stay connected to your mission and your passion if you can. Prioritize that, not as just something to do if you have time, but it's something that's vital for the long-term success and health of you as a business owner. And then lastly, foster clear communication transparency, honesty, and trust. And I want to emphasize honesty with yourself, especially. Know your own strengths and your own weaknesses, and know that it's okay to have permission to maybe not know how to do everything. That can be really hard as a small business owner. But if you can find ways to outsource, find ways to maybe equip yourself. Are there specific trainings? There's a number of different assessments. One is called the Working Genius that talks about different strengths in the workplace, and the Working Genius identifies 6 key areas of strength that people may or may not have, or weaknesses that kind of are. It's ideal if a company or if you can have all of these present. And so obviously, no one person can have all of them. And these are wonder. There's people that you have the big picture. What would it look like if we did this? Wouldn't it be cool to do this? You come up with these grand ideas. That's so important. That's so important. Um, in innovation and in growth. Next is invention. Maybe you're someone that you say, okay, I hear this big idea, but I can take that and come up with a specific idea. Maybe you love doing that. Maybe you hate doing that. It's okay. Then there's discernment, knowing, okay, how do we do this? Is this the right time? Is this the right fit? Where is this going to fit into the whole strategy? And then you've got galvanizers. Galvanizing is something that, how do I get other people on board? How do I hype people up? How do I get us ready to implement this new strategy? Then you have enablement, which is saying, okay, I'm that person that you give me the task and I'm gonna make it happen. Like I'm just tell me what to do and I am there. I'm gonna stick with it. And then tenacity is that ability to stick with stuff and see it through. No one person is going to be gifted at all of those things. But if you can be aware of where you're strong and if you can plug yourself in, that's going to be huge, and equip and surround yourself with others who can fill in the weak spots. So as we close, again, I want to just reiterate that you may have come here with business questions. And I just want to emphasize that this is something that's applicable to all of life. There are benefits that you can receive from this that will cascade into every sphere of your life, including work. Work stresses may be what brought you here, and they may be the invitation into growth. Um, but again, I want to, taking from a bike, balance is found in motion, not staying still. And so sometimes the best thing to do is to keep moving into the unknown and learning through experience. And so what we have here is not an easy button. It's not a quick fix, but rather small, consistent tools that the hope is will build greater resilience and support you in the work that you do and the challenges that you face. Think of a bike that's going to mitigate the onset of larger problems as one that's going to come in for consistent tune-ups along the way for optimal performance. You're going to avoid bigger problems if you keep doing that. And that's what we want to promote. You can have the awareness to tune into yourself, tune in, do the little tune-up, do the tune-up. That's going to do wonders to prevent the bigger breakdown and the bigger repair that you may need if you neglect those things.
Excellent.
I think
Awesome.
that's, yeah. Thanks. I appreciate everyone's time. And yeah, because I've been sharing the screen, I haven't seen what kind of interactions or questions come in, but yeah, would love to take a little time and maybe Simon could definitely add in on some of that as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions? I know that's kind of a lot to probably think about, just strategy, reflect on everything shared today. I know that's where I'm at. Did we have anyone? Feel free to raise your hand too. I can call on you if you'd like. If anyone has questions. We had some great comments too on one of the books resources you shared that they have great audio versions. So if you're normally listening to maybe a more practical or kind of fun distraction podcast, maybe check out one of those books too. We can share those out in the conclusion as well. Yeah, any questions today? I wanted to kind of ask and just kind of thinking, right, how we can, excuse me, interpersonally, kind of start to maybe use some of those charts and use some of those evaluations. And I know in small business, right, sometimes we're working with family, sometimes we're working with people we've known for a long time or we've known through the community, especially in the cycling community. And it can be really hard to broach the question of, hey, I think you're struggling, you need help, especially if we might seem like we don't have it, together either. We're not really grounded. It's, the busiest spring season. We're maybe a little understaffed and things are going great, but maybe relationships are slipping or recognizing a salesperson is doing so many things they're not delegating, or a service manager is just super stressed trying to get, turn around to make sense. So would you have any strategies or suggestions on if we're recognizing another person on our team can use these resources, what would be a good way to maybe share that with them or make them feel empowered to do so?
Yeah, I guess I can jump in here.
I think
Um,
so.
yeah, so I think Austin did a really good job of presenting it again in a non-judgmental. He used a lot of language around normalizing it, and so yeah, you mentioned some of the dynamics of the people we work with,
Yeah,
and so really coming at it again, we talk about like emotional or mental health or wellness. And so one is modeling it, and being able, again, if you're the owner or if you're the boss, or even if you're not, just any employee, that's something we can start giving language to or modeling that. We think about as parents doing that sometimes. Like, you know what, I'm going to take five right now, or like it's a beautiful day. I'm gonna go for a bike ride on my lunch break. Or you know what, I didn't respond that great there. I realize, I'm in hyper arousal right now. And so just being able to like identify it in your own body and label that and start having that common language around it,
right.
then it's not calling someone else out. It's like, oh, you have this, you have a problem. It's saying, like Austin said, we actually all experience this. So partly it's like you're a human being. And so being able to realize that like you're human, you have these responses, your body is giving you indicators that you're not at the best place. And then as a coworker, I'm experiencing that. And so I'm going to let you know that this is what I'm experiencing in you right now. But it's not a judgmental thing. And so if the whole workplace culture has some of that shared language, just like when you're hungry at lunchtime, we don't view that as a moral failing. If someone's like, "Hey, I'm hungry. What do you guys want for lunch?" We don't view that as like, "Well, what's wrong with you?" So if someone's like, you know what, I'm really stressed out right now, or that customer like really just put me over the edge, or the fact that sales are down right now, like I'm super stressed out right now. I'm not sure how we're going to pivot for the spring season.
Absolutely. That's a great way to frame it too. Of like, yeah, we're hungry right now. We're gonna strategize and figure out how to work in a lunch on this busy Saturday afternoon and kind of using that in the same way. I love that. And we have a question. Oh, great. From Mountain Road Cycles. Yes, please ask your question. Thank you. Let me know if the audio is not working for you. I think you may still be muted.
Mute.
There we go. Thanks.
Hey Megan, how are you? Jacob English,
I'm
Mountain Red Cycles.
I'm great. Yes, thanks so much for being on here today. I feel like we all had such a great hour to start our week here.
One, this is a wonderful presentation. Both those doctors did a wonderful job, and as you know, after 35 years in the bike industry, it gets hard. So
Yeah,
I just wanted to say thank you for giving me this presentation, so
thanks.
we can get started on the season.
Excellent.
But there is,
Yeah,
I will comment that, when you do this so long, there's a lot of stress, and everything they said was very correct. So,
great to hear. Yeah. And I know we can all kind of maybe talk amongst ourselves or maybe at an expo or the MBDA
yeah,
summit, but just to kind of jump into the season for many of us, this is just so great to have. So I'm really glad, Jacob, that was helpful for you too. Appreciate that.
yeah, I just think it was a smart idea for all of us that have been in it so long. And,
Right.
uh, let's get our mental health good and our ideas good and get back on a bike and go ride. And everything they said was great. So I thank you for doing this. And that's all I got to say.
Awesome. Thanks, Jacob.
No
You guys
problem.
are you guys are providing I think Simon could I
Yeah,
think would agree with me that sometimes as much as any therapy session that we could give, if a client could just get out and ride a bike, I mean what you guys are doing is just as essential. We're just what you're providing for people. And I'm sure you see you're dealing with people that love what they're doing, and you're in a unique position to, especially if you know the people personally, you're in
absolutely.
a
I mean, we have so many great
cool for that.
relationships with clients, and we've seen them, from their literally 25 to 65 type of thing, and their kids and their grandkids. We are providing that for them, but we sometimes forget to provide it for ourselves.
Right. Absolutely. And let's see. I think we had another raised hand here. Sorry, I just got out of order on my screen. Oh my gosh.
It looks
Yeah,
like back alley bikes.
there we go. Yeah, sorry. I know you popped in the chat there, but yeah, feel free to ask your question.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. So yeah, this is amazing. Thank you. I feel like all these things, it's like check, check, check. These are all things that I've heard through therapy. I'm stoked that it's being incorporated into a professional sphere. And my question was, so for folks that these ideas are totally new in the professional setting, and some people could be very resistant to essentially being vulnerable around coworkers and and the leadership team. Do you have any suggestions for working with that type of person in a way that's still healthy?
Okay, sorry, could you frame the question one more time?
Yes. So as not everybody is familiar with these ideas, and that often these ideas are, historically we only find them in individual therapy sessions. So the idea of them incorporated into the workplace, it can be new.
Mhm.
Do you have any suggestions for folks, or how if we
Okay, okay, so I think the question is that how do you incorporate kind of these individual therapy techniques or things, again, the language around it into a corporate culture? And I think, again, that part of that is it's a little bit different if you're the one leading that culture. Again, maybe you're the owner, maybe you are the employer versus the employee. Um, Again, Austen and I live in kind of the therapy world, so sometimes it's hard, and we even talked about it before the training. How do you present a training like this that is kind of common language and does make sense to someone that's not as as used to having that language? But I think kind of again normalizing those things and understanding. So I feel like in general, these terms, again, with the neuroplasticity, with the way that our brains develop and react, it is becoming more normalized. And so being able to just acknowledge like this is actually how we operate. Again, when you think about using a lot of bike analogies, but when you think about it, how a bike operates, there's some individuals that come in and buy a bike and they have no clue actually how things work, that they pull that lever and how that translates to actually pressure on the rear rim to slow them down. But they experience that. And so part of this is actually just dissecting some of these things and saying, as humans, this is actually how we operate. And then as a collective group of humans, this is how we collectively we operate. And this person reacting this way affects that one. And so being able to kind of normalize that and have those discussions again in a non-judgmental way. And
I think
Austen, do you
too.
have add to
Yeah, I
that?
think just even being aware of, I mean, maybe you're with a client, all right, or a customer that you're like, they could really, like, if they just knew some of this, that would be helpful, but they would push back on that, or oh, that's mumbo jumbo, whatever kind of thing. Um, Even being aware of, okay, if everybody's response makes sense into some regard, what's driving that? Even if it's you personally asking the question, what is the thought behind this? Do they feel weak? Does that make, were they taught that makes them feel weak? And even just that awareness can be helpful. And how, most people I have found, if you're going to put a specific label on things, they may have certain stigmas or connotations. But most people I found, if you listen to them and you're able to kind of come calmly, people want that, right? They may not know what that is. And so finding those small ways that you can meet them and kind of the proof in the pudding to be like, if it may be something that people that you're working with may never fully have language for, but if you can find those small ways that they're actually like, oh, okay, that was actually really helpful. I like that. And maybe it opens the opportunity to be like, well, can I tell you what was actually really behind that? That can be a neat, teaching moment, depending on the relationship you have with the person.
That's a great one, Samara. Sorry, I think your
Yeah.
audio is back. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, yes, thank you. I feel like the reflecting back to the science is very helpful to kind of, yeah, as if people are tend to be or want to be closed off emotionally, which this is
Right.
emotional conversation, how to reframe that conversation is like, this is science, this is how like we as humans relate to each other, this is how our brains work. Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
Another way to look at it is someone inside their window of tolerance, someone that's regulated is a very attractive person to be around, especially for people that are not regulated. And so just being that person, and sometimes we don't, it's like I don't think I'm making a difference. I feel like everyone else is still dysregulated, but making that commitment to like I can only really change myself. And so can I keep showing up in that way? And that's actually the best chance. We talk about co-regulation. I mean, that's the best chance of actually having other people be regulated is first and foremost to regulate ourselves. And it's not always an immediate thing, but it does have an effect.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? I appreciate the extra time here, everyone. I know this was a great conversation. I just want to call it a comment here too. Yeah, kind of uh, the emotional, and I think there's a good word here, like feeling gut pain when you have a new customer, maybe you're a customer who you're just working with for several days, multiple days sometimes, or several hours on a visit, striking up a rapport that becomes personal, feeling like you're providing exceptional service, to buy a bike, big ticket item, and then they come back with maybe that exact bike direct to consumer or purchase somewhere else. I'm sure we can all picture some of that most, gut-wrenching feeling of that customer who you just thought you really served so well. And then they might say, "Oh, I want to support local. I need to buy a lock from you." Or they come in, I need to buy a small item, but it wasn't the bike. It wasn't the thing that's gonna, make your week look great. Um, yeah, any quick tips on how to self-regulate when something feels personal and, it is business, but how do we maybe move past that?
I think again that not all or nothing, being okay with the gray areas and finding boundaries. Like it would be very normal to feel angry, right? Like to recognize that anger of like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Maybe it's angry at Amazon or at the system that allows people to, like I'm gonna go in for the personalized care and then I'm gonna go somewhere else. To find times where you say, when am I allowed to feel angry? Because if you don't allow that, that's not going to process and that's going to get stuck in your body somewhere, or that's going to have an issue, a consequence. But if you can give yourself permission with healthy times to say, okay, maybe it's when you leave, maybe during the workday that happens, and you say, okay, I have this time in my car before I do anything else where I know I'm going to let myself feel the anger that I felt, can set it aside. And I'll also be like, and here I am, and I'm going to show up to this person, recognizing they're a person. I think just giving yourself the grace to hold both, um, and having specific boundaries maybe that help you know when you can kind of live in that tension. That would be my suggestion.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. I like the idea of encapsulating it in a certain time, ride home time or drive home time of acknowledging that. Because, yeah, I think there's a lot of different things. Sometimes it can also be, coworker stress. Maybe you went out of your way for someone and feel gut-wrenching feeling when they state that they, can't can't come in tomorrow, or just something small that almost feels personal. That's just such a great way to regulate that. And one last comment, I again appreciate the extra time, everyone, when it's call out. Something not biking, swimming most days improves my outlook. That is so real. I think we've probably all felt that. Maybe some people, bikes are always a positive escape, but I think a lot of us, like, if I could speak for that, sometimes bikes become something where you think about, oh my gosh, that drivetrain that gave us trouble. You're looking at your own bike, or you're thinking about a brand maybe you don't work with or have a good relationship with anymore. Um, it's okay to do another activity that maybe, other friends or customers even do. Maybe it's bird watching or pickleball or another way to just experience community, and maybe meet some new people too. Sometimes that can be helpful to, have some new faces and perspective. So, thank you everyone so much for the comments. Thank you, Austen and Simon, so much for this fantastic presentation. We do have that resource sheet too. I'll add the books you mentioned onto that as well. And we'll share that out in our webinar resource recording when that's uploaded to our website. So thank you both so much. And thanks everyone for joining or viewing this. And we hope this is a great way to center and start your week from a great place. And yeah, hope you take good care of yourselves and share this with those who it can help. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.